A scream pierced through the gallery room. On the red carpet, a $2 million diamond bracelet had vanished. "Call security, lock every door!" Victor Hale, the billionaire owner of the mansion, shouted across the hall. Beside him stood Rosa, the housekeeper, frozen in place, her cleaning basket still clutched in trembling hands. "You were the last one here." She couldn't speak. Her throat closed. Her eyes filled with tears she fought to hold back. But from the end of the corridor, a small voice cut through the chaos. "It wasn't my mother." Sophie, 13 years old. Rosa's daughter stepped forward through the crowd of staff and guests. Her heart pounded, her hands shook, but her voice stayed steady. And in that moment, a child would change everything inside that cold, silent mansion forever. But before we continue, make sure you've subscribed to the channel and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. We'd love to know how far this story has traveled. Victor Hale was not a man who smiled easily. He was a self-made billionaire built from calculated investments and ruthless decisions. His mansion stood on the edge of the city like a fortress, cold marble floors, reflecting nothing but wealth and distance. Every surface gleamed. Every corner was monitored. Every person who worked there knew one rule: speak only when spoken to. In this house, silence was currency. Rosa Martinez had worked for Mr. Hale for 5 years. She arrived before dawn and left after dusk. She cleaned the gallery room where priceless artifacts were displayed behind glass. She polished the silverware that hosted dignitaries and CEOs. She moved through the mansion like a shadow, careful never to disturb, never to question, never to assume she belonged to the world she cleaned. But Rosa had something Mr. Hale did not. She had Sophie. Sophie was 13, small for her age, with dark eyes that absorbed everything and lips that rarely spoke unless necessary. While her mother worked, Sophie studied in a cramped room behind the kitchen. She read books from the library cart Rosa wheeled past each week. She listened to the conversations that drifted through hallways. She watched people the way her mother watched dust, carefully, quietly cataloging every detail. Sophie loved her mother more than anything in the world. And she feared more than anything that one day someone would misunderstand her. That day came sooner than either of them expected. It was a Thursday evening when Mr. Hale announced the dinner party. He would be hosting potential investors, people with old money and new interest. He wanted to impress them. He wanted to remind them why Victor Hale was a name worth remembering. And so he decided to display the Luna diamond. The bracelet was legendary. Platinum links embedded with flawless diamonds, each stone catching light like trapped stars. It had belonged to a duchess, been auctioned in Paris, and now sat in Victor Hale's private collection, untouched, unseen by most of the world. Until tonight. Rosa was tasked with preparing the gallery. She wiped the glass case until it gleamed. She adjusted the lighting so the bracelet shimmered under soft gold beams. She stood back, checked her work, then checked it again. Sophie passed by the doorway holding a stack of folded napkins. "It's beautiful, Mama," she whispered. Rosa smiled faintly. "It is. But beauty like that comes with a price." Sophie tilted her head. "What kind of price?" "The kind people don't always want to pay." Her mother didn't explain further. She never did. Rosa had learned long ago that in houses like this, some questions were better left unasked. The guests arrived at 7. Champagne flowed. Laughter echoed through marble hallways. Rosa moved between the kitchen and the dining room, refilling glasses, clearing plates her presence barely noticed. Sophie stayed in the back, watching through cracked doors, studying faces, voices, gestures. She noticed the new assistant, Dylan. He was young, charming, always smiling. He complimented the chef, joked with the security guard, and moved through the house like he already owned it. At one point, Sophie saw him linger near the gallery door, glancing inside before walking away. She thought nothing of it then. By 10 o'clock, the party wound down. Guests filtered out into the cool night. Staff began cleaning up. Rosa returned to the gallery one last time to ensure everything was in order before locking up. That's when she saw it. The glass case was open, just slightly. A crack no wider than a fingernail. Her heart dropped. She stepped closer, peered inside. The Luna diamond was gone. Rosa's hands went cold. Her breath caught. She looked around the empty room, her mind racing. She hadn't opened the case. She hadn't touched it. She had only cleaned around it. But she was the last one here. And in a house like this, being last meant being guilty. She ran to find the manager, her voice shaking as she explained. Within minutes, Mr. Hale stormed into the gallery, his face a mask of fury. "Who was the last person in this room?" he demanded. The manager hesitated, then answered quietly. "Rosa." Victor Hale turned toward her, his eyes like ice. "You're fired. Pack your things. I want you gone by morning." Rosa opened her mouth to speak, to explain, to beg. But no words came. In this mansion, the voice of a maid carried no weight. She nodded once, tears streaming silently down her face, and walked toward the small room where her daughter slept. She didn't know that in the morning everything would change. The evening had started like any other high-profile gathering at the Hale mansion. Luxury cars lined the circular driveway. Men in tailored suits and women draped in silk moved through the grand entrance like they owned the night. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light across faces that smiled easily, laughed loudly, and spoke in the language of power and influence. Victor Hale stood at the center of it, all glass of scotch in hand, commanding attention without effort. Tonight was important. These weren't just guests. They were potential partners in a venture that could expand his empire into 3 new markets. He needed them impressed. He needed them invested. And nothing impressed old money quite like older treasures. At 8:30, he led the group into the gallery. The Luna diamond sat beneath spotless glass, illuminated like a piece of captured moonlight. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Cameras flashed. Someone whispered that it belonged in a museum. Victor smiled coolly. "Some things," he said, "are too valuable to share with the world." The guests circled the case, admiring, envious, calculating its worth in their minds. Victor watched their faces, satisfied. This was control. This was power. After 15 minutes, he ushered them back to the dining room for the main course. Rosa had been working non-stop since 6 that evening. She moved between the kitchen and the main halls, carrying trays, refilling wine glasses, clearing plates before guests even set down their forks. Her feet ached. Her back throbbed. But she kept her face neutral, her movements efficient. She had learned long ago that in houses like this, exhaustion was not an excuse. Around 9, she noticed Dylan, Mr. Hale's new personal assistant, hovering near the gallery entrance. He was holding his phone, scrolling casually, but his eyes kept flicking toward the open door. "Need something?" Rosa asked as she passed. He looked up, flashed a charming grin. "Just checking if anyone needs anything in there. A lot of important people tonight." "They're all in the dining room." "Right. Of course." He pocketed his phone and walked away, whistling softly. Rosa thought nothing of it. Dylan was friendly, always helpful. He'd been with the household for only 2 months. But everyone seemed to like him. By 10:15, the last of the guests had left. Staff moved through the mansion like a cleaning crew, after a storm, restoring order to chaos. Rosa grabbed her supplies and headed toward the gallery. It was her responsibility to ensure the room was locked and secure before leaving for the night. She pushed open the heavy door and stepped inside. The room was dim now, only the soft glow from the display lighting remained. She walked toward the glass case, intending to give it one final wipe before locking up. That's when she saw it. The case was open, not wide, just a sliver, a gap so small she almost missed it. Her stomach twisted. She set down her cleaning basket and moved closer, her pulse quickening. Maybe someone had opened it to show a guest and forgotten to close it properly. Maybe it was nothing. But when she looked inside, her breath stopped. The Luna diamond was gone. The velvet cushion where it had rested just hours ago was empty. No bracelet, no glittering stones, just absence. Rosa's hands began to shake. She looked around the room, searching for any sign of the bracelet, hoping it had somehow been moved, misplaced, relocated for safety. Nothing. Panic surged through her chest. She had to report this, immediately. She ran to find the house manager, Marcus, who was overseeing the final cleanup in the kitchen. Her voice came out rushed, breathless. "Mr. Marcus, the bracelet, it's gone. The case was open. I didn't touch it. I swear I didn't." Marcus's face went pale. "Show me." They hurried back to the gallery. Marcus examined the case, checked the lock, looked around the room with the precision of someone trained to handle disasters. Then he pulled out his radio. "Mr. Hale, we have a situation. Please come to the gallery immediately." Within 2 minutes, Victor Hale stormed into the room, still in his dinner jacket, his expression dark and dangerous. "What situation?" Marcus gestured toward the empty case. "The Luna diamond is missing, sir." Victor's jaw clenched. His eyes swept the room, landing on Rosa, who stood frozen near the door, her cleaning basket still in hand. "Who was the last person in this room?" His voice was cold, controlled, lethal. Marcus hesitated, then answered. "Rosa, sir. She was assigned to lock up the gallery tonight." Victor turned his full attention to her. His gaze felt like a blade. "Did you take it?" "No, sir. I would never." "You were the last one here." "I was cleaning. I saw the case open. I came to report." "Convenient." He cut her off. "You discover it missing the moment we notice. After you've been alone in this room." "Mr. Hale, please, I've worked for you for 5 years. I would never—" "Loyalty means nothing when $2 million disappears." His voice dropped to a deadly calm. "You're fired. I want you out of this house by morning. If the bracelet isn't returned by tomorrow, I'm calling the police." Rosa felt the ground fall away beneath her. Her vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall in front of him. "Sir, I didn't—" "We're done here." He turned and walked out, leaving her standing in the empty gallery, surrounded by priceless things she would never be allowed to touch, accused of a crime she didn't commit. Marcus looked at her with something close to pity, but he said nothing. In this house, defending the accused meant becoming one. Rosa picked up her basket with trembling hands and walked slowly back toward the staff quarters. Her mind raced. Her chest ached. How would she tell Sophie? How would they survive? She had no answers, only the crushing weight of a truth no one would believe. Sophie woke to the sound of drawers opening and closing. It was barely dawn. Gray light filtered through the small window of their room. She sat up, rubbing her eyes, and saw her mother packing their belongings into 2 worn suitcases. Rosa's hands moved mechanically, folding clothes, stacking books, her face pale and hollow. "Mama." Sophie's voice was small, confused. "What are you doing?" Rosa didn't turn around. "We're leaving Mija." "Leaving why?" Her mother's hands paused. For a moment she said nothing. Then quietly, "They think I did something I didn't do." Sophie climbed out of bed, her heart starting to race. "What happened?" "A bracelet went missing. I was the last person in the room. Mr. Hale doesn't believe me." Rosa's voice cracked, but she steadied it. "It doesn't matter what I say. We have to go." Sophie stood frozen, watching her mother pack away their life in silence, accepting blame for something she didn't do, simply because no one with power would listen. And something inside Sophie snapped. "No!" Rosa turned, surprised. "Sophie." "No, Mama. If you didn't take it, then someone else did. And we're going to prove it. Mija, it's not that simple." "Yes, it is." Sophie's voice was firm now, stronger than she felt. "You always tell me the truth matters. So let's find it." Rosa looked at her daughter, this small, serious girl who somehow carried more courage than anyone else in this mansion. She wanted to protect her, to tell her the world didn't work that way, that truth didn't always win. But the hope in Sophie's eyes stopped her. "Okay," Rosa whispered. "Okay." Sophie's mind began to move, sorting through everything she'd seen the night before. If her mother was accused because she was the last person in the gallery, then the real question was who was there before her. She closed her eyes, replaying the evening in her memory like a film. The guests, the laughter, the staff moving through hallways, her mother carrying trays, and then Dylan. She remembered him standing near the gallery door around 9 o'clock, scrolling on his phone, glancing inside. He'd said he was checking if anyone needed anything, but the guests were all in the dining room. Why would he be there? Sophie's pulse quickened. It wasn't proof, but it was a thread. And threads could unravel lies. "Mama," she said suddenly, "do they have security cameras?" Rosa blinked. "Yes, in every hallway. The security office monitors them." Then the cameras saw who went into the gallery. We need to see that footage. Sophie, they won't let us. They will, if we ask the right way. Before Rosa could argue, Sophie was already dressed and out the door, moving through the quiet mansion with purpose. She knew where the security office was. She'd seen the guard Mr. Chen sitting there during her evening walks. He was kind. He always said hello. She found him at his desk reviewing monitors, a cup of coffee steaming beside him. Mr. Chen? He looked up, surprised. Sophie, it's early. Everything okay? She stepped inside, her heart pounding, but kept her voice calm. My mom got fired last night. They think she stole the diamond bracelet, but she didn't. I know she didn't. Mr. Chen's expression softened. I heard about that. I'm sorry, kid. Can I see the camera footage from the gallery? Please, I just want to know who was there before my mom. That's all. He hesitated. Sophie, I'm not supposed to show that to anyone without Mr. Hale's permission. I know, but my mom has worked here for 5 years. She's never done anything wrong. If the cameras show she's innocent, wouldn't Mr. Hale want to know? Mr. Chen studied her for a long moment. Then he sighed, glanced at the door, and gestured toward the monitor. 5 minutes. That's all I can give you. Sophie's hands trembled as she stepped closer. Mr. Chen pulled up the footage from the previous night, fast-forwarding to the time around the party. What time did your mom go into the gallery? After the guests left. Maybe around 10. He scrolled back further, slowing the footage to normal speed at 9 o'clock. They watched in silence. At 9:12 p.m., the gallery door opened. Dylan walked in. Sophie's breath caught. Mr. Chen leaned forward, frowning. Dylan approached the glass case. He looked around, checking the hallway behind him. Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out something small. A key, or tool Sophie couldn't tell, and opened the case. He adjusted something inside. His movements were quick, practiced. Then he closed the case, but not completely. Just enough to look shut from a distance. At 9:14 p.m. he left the room. At 9:17 p.m. Rosa entered. She walked to the case, noticed it was slightly open, and leaned closer to inspect it. Then she turned and left, clearly going to report what she'd found. Sophie's heart slammed against her ribs. He did it, she whispered. He opened it before my mom got there. Mr. Chen rewound the footage, watched it again. His face hardened. That's not cleaning. That's not checking. That's stealing. Sophie's voice was shaking now, but not from fear. From anger. From certainty. Can you save this? Can you show Mr. Hale? I can. But Sophie, you should let me handle. No. She pulled out her phone, an old model Rosa had given her for emergencies. I need proof, in case something happens to the files. Mr. Chen hesitated, then nodded. Make it quick. Sophie held up her phone and photographed the monitor at each timestamp. Dylan entering. Dylan at the case. Her mother entering after. She had it. Clear. Undeniable. Thank you, Mr. Chen. She turned toward the door, adrenaline flooding her veins. Sophie, where are you going? She looked back, her young face set with determination that didn't belong to a 13-year-old, but fit her perfectly in this moment. To make sure the truth gets heard. And she walked out carrying evidence that would shatter the silence of the mansion forever. Sophie stood outside Victor Hale's office, her phone clutched in one sweaty hand, her heart hammering so hard she could hear it in her ears. The heavy oak door loomed before her like the entrance to a courtroom. Beyond it, she could hear voices. Mr. Hale was meeting with his lawyer, discussing something in low, clipped tones. This was a man who controlled millions, who made decisions that shaped markets, who fired people with a single word. And she was about to walk in and tell him he was wrong. Her legs felt weak. Every instinct screamed at her to turn around, to stay quiet, to accept what powerful people decided. But then she thought of her mother's face that morning. The tears Rosa tried to hide. The shame she didn't deserve. Sophie knocked. The voices inside stopped. I said no interruptions. Victor's voice came through the door, sharp and irritated. Sophie knocked again. Footsteps. The door swung open. Marcus, the house manager, stood there, his expressions somewhere between annoyed and alarmed. Sophie, you can't be here. I need to speak to Mr. Hale. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "It's about the bracelet." From inside the office, Victor's voice cut through. "Let her in." Marcus hesitated, then stepped aside. Sophie walked into the room. It was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the estate. Dark wood shelves lined with leather-bound books. A desk the size of a small car. And behind it Victor Hale sitting with his lawyer beside him, both men staring at her with a mix of curiosity and impatience. "You have 30 seconds, Victor said coldly. "Then you leave." Sophie's throat tightened, but she lifted her phone. "I have proof that my mother didn't steal the bracelet." The lawyer raised an eyebrow. Victor's expression didn't change. "Proof," he repeated, voice flat. "You're 13. I'm 13, and I know how to look at a camera." She stepped forward, holding out her phone. "This is from last night. The security footage from the gallery." Victor didn't move. "The security footage is being reviewed by professionals." "Then they should see this." Sophie's voice shook, but she pushed through. At 9:12 p.m., Dylan went into the gallery. He opened the case. At 9:17, my mother walked in and found it already open. She went to report it. She didn't take anything. She was trying to do the right thing. The room went silent. Victor's eyes narrowed. He stood, slowly walked around his desk, and held out his hand. "Show me." Sophie unlocked her phone and pulled up the photos. Her hands trembled as she handed it over. Victor studied the first image. The timestamp. Dylan entering the gallery. He swiped to the next. Dylan at the case. Then the next. Rosa entering minutes later. His jaw tightened. He turned to Marcus. "Get Dylan, now, and bring Chen from security with the original footage." Marcus nodded and left quickly. Victor handed the phone back to Sophie, his face unreadable. "Sit down." She sat in one of the large leather chairs, feeling impossibly small. The lawyer leaned over, whispering something to Victor, who waved him off impatiently. Minutes passed in tense silence. Then the door opened. Marcus returned with Mr. Chen, who carried a tablet displaying the security feed. Behind them, Dylan walked in, casual, smiling, completely unaware. "You needed me, sir." Victor didn't answer. He took the tablet from Mr. Chen, compared it to Sophie's photos, then turned the screen toward Dylan. "Explain this." Dylan leaned in, squinting at the footage. His smile faltered. I was just checking the room, making sure everything was secure after the guests." "At 9:12 you entered the gallery." Victor's voice was ice. "At 9:14 you're seen opening the display case. At 9:17 Rosa enters. She reports the case open. The bracelet is missing." He paused. "You were alone in that room for 2 minutes." Dylan's face drained of color. "Sir, I can explain." "Then explain." "I didn't steal it. I was checking it. Someone asked me to make sure it was still there after the party, and I—" "Who asked you?" Dylan stammered. "I don't remember. One of the guests, I think." "Stop lying." Victor's voice dropped to something dangerous. "You opened that case. You had access. You had opportunity. And now a $2 million bracelet is missing, and you're standing here telling me you don't remember who told you to check on it." Dylan's breathing quickened. His eyes darted toward the door. "Sir, I swear I didn't take it to keep it. I needed—" His voice cracked. "I needed money." The room froze. Victor stepped closer, his voice lethal. "Say that again." Dylan's shoulders sagged, his facade crumbled. Tears welled in his eyes. "I have debts. Gambling debts. Bad ones. I thought if I could just borrow it, pawn it for a few days, pay off what I owed, and then return it before anyone noticed." He looked up, desperate. "I wasn't going to keep it. I was going to bring it back. I swear." Victor stared at him, disgusted. "Where is it now?" "In my car. In the glove compartment. I panicked when everyone started looking for it. I didn't know what to do." Victor turned to Marcus. "Call the police. Have his vehicle searched, and get him out of my sight." Marcus moved immediately, pulling out his phone. 2 security guards appeared and escorted Dylan toward the door. He didn't resist. He just kept repeating, I'm sorry, as they led him away. The office fell silent again. Victor turned to Mr. Chen. Thank you. You can go. Chen nodded and left, glancing at Sophie with something like pride. Then Victor looked down at Sophie still sitting in the oversized chair, her phone in her lap. For a long moment he said nothing. Then quietly, Where's your mother? Packing. You told her to leave by morning. He closed his eyes, briefly exhaled. Go get her. Bring her here. Sophie stood, her legs still shaking. Are you going to apologize? Victor met her gaze. Yes. She nodded once, then walked out of the office. 10 minutes later, she returned with Rosa, whose face was streaked with dried tears and confusion. Victor stood as they entered. He looked at Rosa directly, and for the first time, Sophie saw something in his expression she hadn't seen before. Regret. I was wrong, he said simply. You didn't take the bracelet. You tried to report it. And I accused you without evidence, without listening, without giving you the chance to defend yourself. He paused. I'm sorry. Rosa's voice was barely a whisper. Thank you, sir. Victor glanced at Sophie. Your daughter is the reason we know the truth. She didn't accept my decision. She found proof. She fought for you. He looked back at Rosa. I don't want to lose someone like you, or someone like her. If you're willing, I'd like you to stay. Rosa looked at Sophie, whose eyes shimmered with tears she refused to let fall. We'll stay, Rosa said softly. Victor nodded. Then, almost awkwardly, he added, and your daughter just taught me something I should have learned a long time ago. That justice doesn't require power. It just requires courage. Sophie looked up at him, her voice quiet but clear. It also requires listening. Victor almost smiled. Yes, it does. The office felt different now. The tension had lifted, replaced by something quieter, heavier. Rosa stood near the door, her hands folded in front of her, still processing what had just happened. Sophie remained beside her, watching Victor Hale carefully, as if making sure his words were real. Victor gestured toward the chairs. Please. Sit. Rosa hesitated, then moved forward, slowly taking a seat. Sophie sat beside her, closer than necessary, protective. Victor returned to his desk but didn't sit behind it. Instead, he leaned against the front edge, bringing himself to their level. It was a small gesture, but Sophie noticed. Her mother noticed too. I need to say this properly. Victor began, his voice quieter, now stripped of its usual command. Rosa, you've worked for me for 5 years. In that time, you've never given me a single reason to distrust you. Not once. And yet the moment something went wrong, I assumed the worst. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I didn't even ask for your side of the story. I just decided you were guilty because you were there. Because it was easier to blame you than to look further. Rosa's eyes glistened, but she kept her composure. I understand, Mr. Hale. People in my position, we're easy to accuse. That doesn't make it right. His voice hardened, but not at her, at himself. I built my career on facts, on evidence, on not making emotional decisions. And I threw all of that away because I was angry. Because I wanted someone to blame immediately. He looked directly at her. You deserved better. And I failed you. Rosa nodded slowly, her throat tight. Thank you for saying that. Victor's gaze shifted to Sophie. But I didn't fail just you. I failed your daughter too. He studied the young girl, this quiet force who had walked into his office with nothing but a phone and the truth. Sophie, what you did took more courage than most adults I know possess. You had every reason to stay silent, to accept what I said and move on. But you didn't. Sophie looked down at her hands. I couldn't let my mom be blamed for something she didn't do. Most people would have. Victor's tone softened. Most people see power and decide it's not worth fighting. They assume the person with money or authority must be right, or at least untouchable. But you didn't assume that. You looked for the truth. And you made sure it was heard. Sophie glanced up at him. My mom always tells me that truth matters more than comfort. Victor smiled faintly. Your mother is wiser than I gave her credit for. He straightened, crossing his arms, his expression turning more serious. I want to ask you something, Sophie. Why did you trust that I would listen? After I'd already decided your mother was guilty, why did you think showing me evidence would change anything? Sophie considered the question. Because I didn't have another choice. If I didn't try, you'd never know. And even if you didn't believe me, at least I would know I tried. She paused. Sometimes doing the right thing isn't about winning. It's about not giving up. The room fell silent. Victor looked at her for a long moment, something shifting behind his eyes. Respect. Maybe even admiration. You're 13, he said quietly. And you just taught me something I should have learned decades ago. He turned back to Rosa. I don't want you to leave. I know I said you were fired, and I know an apology doesn't undo that. But if you're willing to stay, I'd like you to continue working here. Not because I'm being generous, but because you're someone this house needs. Someone I clearly need to remember what integrity looks like. Rosa's voice wavered. Are you sure, sir? I'm sure. He glanced at Sophie again. And I'd like to do something for your daughter as well. Not as payment, not as charity, but as recognition. He walked to his desk, pulled out a leather folder, and wrote something inside. Then he handed it to Rosa. This is a letter of recommendation for Sophie, for any school she wants to attend. Private public boarding international. Wherever she wants to go, I'll make sure the doors are open. Rosa stared at the letter, overwhelmed. Mr. Hale, this is too much. It's not enough. His voice was firm. Your daughter stood up for you when no one else would. She found the truth when I refused to look for it. That's the kind of person the world needs more of. And I'm not going to let her potential go to waste because I was too proud to see it. Sophie looked at the letter, then at Victor. Thank you, she said softly. But I don't want to go anywhere. I want to stay with my mom. Victor nodded. Then we'll make sure you have the best education available here. Tutors, resources, whatever you need. Rosa wiped her eyes, struggling to find words. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Victor's tone was gentle now. Just know that what happened tonight, it changed something. Not just for you. For me too. He extended his hand. Rosa looked at it, then stood and shook it. Her grip was steady despite the tears still clinging to her lashes. Victor turned to Sophie and extended his hand to her as well. She took it, her small hand disappearing in his, but her grip just as firm. Thank you for not staying quiet, he said. Sophie met his eyes. Thank you for listening. As they left the office, Rosa placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder, squeezing gently. I'm proud of you, mija, she whispered. Sophie leaned into her. I learned from you, Mama. And for the first time in 24 hours, Rosa smiled. 1 week later, Victor Hale called a staff meeting in the main hall. It was unusual. Meetings like this only happened once or twice a year, usually to announce policy changes or introduce new management. The staff gathered quietly, whispering among themselves, unsure what to expect. Rosa and Sophie stood near the back, trying to stay invisible as always. Victor entered, followed by Marcus and the head of HR. But this time his expression wasn't stern. It was measured, deliberate. He stepped to the front of the room and waited for silence. I've called you all here because something happened last week that I need to address publicly. His voice carried across the hall, clear and steady. A valuable item went missing from this house. In my anger, I accused someone without proper investigation. I fired a loyal employee based on assumption, not evidence. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. That employee was Rosa Martinez. Heads turned. Murmurs rippled through the room. Rosa's face flushed, but she kept her eyes forward. Rosa did nothing wrong, Victor continued. In fact, she tried to report the problem the moment she discovered it. I didn't listen. I didn't investigate. I simply blamed the person who was easiest to blame. He looked directly at Rosa. That was a failure of leadership. and I apologize not just to Rosa, but to all of you. Because if I can fail one person so easily, I can fail any of you." The room was silent now, every eye on him. The bracelet was recovered. The real thief confessed. But none of that would have happened without one person who refused to accept injustice. He gestured toward the back. "Sophie Martinez, please come forward." Sophie froze. Rosa touched her shoulder, gently nodding. Slowly, Sophie walked through the crowd, her heart pounding, until she stood beside Victor at the front. He looked down at her, then addressed the room again. "This young woman is 13 years old. She had no authority, no power, no reason to believe anyone would listen to her. But she found evidence. She brought it to me. And because of her courage, an innocent person was cleared, and the truth came to light." He turned to an assistant who handed him a framed certificate and an envelope. "Sophie, I'm establishing something today in your honor. It's called the Future Voice of Truth Scholarship. This will support your education from now through university, wherever you choose to go." He handed her the certificate and envelope. "Not because I owe you, but because the world needs people like you. People who speak up when it's hard. People who don't accept silence as safety." The staff began to applaud. Softly at first, then louder, filling the hall. Sophie stood there holding the certificate, her cheeks burning, overwhelmed. Victor leaned down slightly. "Do you want to say anything?" She looked up at him, then out at the faces watching her. Her mother stood in the back, tears streaming down her face, smiling. Sophie took a breath. "I didn't do anything special," she said quietly, her voice small but steady. "I just did what adults should do. I looked for the truth. I didn't stay quiet when something was wrong." She paused, glancing at Victor. "Maybe if more people did that, we wouldn't need kids to fix grown-up mistakes." A few people laughed, some nodded. Victor smiled genuinely this time. "You're right," he said. "We should." The applause returned, warmer now, more personal. As Sophie walked back to her mother, Rosa pulled her into a tight embrace, whispering, "I'm so proud of you, mija." Sophie buried her face in her mother's shoulder, finally letting herself feel the weight of what she'd done. She had spoken. And for once, the world had listened. Sophie Martinez stood on the stage of Lincoln Academy, holding a crystal trophy in her hands. The Junior Ethics Award. It was given annually to one student who demonstrated moral courage in their community. This year, out of hundreds of nominees, Sophie had won for an essay titled "Why Truth Matters." The essay told her story. Not for fame, but to remind people that justice doesn't belong to the powerful. It belongs to anyone brave enough to seek it. The piece had gone viral in educational circles. It was picked up by Forbes Youth, republished in ethics journals, and shared across social media by teachers, parents, and activists who saw in Sophie's words a reflection of what the world needed more of: integrity, courage, the refusal to stay silent. Victor Hale read the article on a quiet Sunday morning in his office. He sat back in his chair, the magazine open on his desk, and smiled. "Sometimes," he murmured to himself, "to learn about honor, you have to be reminded by someone who has nothing but honesty." On the corner of his desk sat a small framed photograph. It hadn't been there a year ago, but now it occupied a place of prominence just beside his computer monitor. The photo showed Sophie and Rosa standing in the mansion's garden, both smiling, holding a handmade sign that read, "Thank you for believing me." Victor looked at it often. It reminded him of the day he almost destroyed an innocent woman's life. And the day a 13-year-old girl taught him what real power looked like. Not wealth. Not authority. Truth. Sophie Martinez's story reminds us that truth doesn't need power to be spoken. When people rush to judgment, it's often the courage of the smallest voices that restores fairness to the world. An apology may come late, but the actions we take to make things right are what people remember. Position and money can open doors, but integrity and honesty open hearts. Never underestimate the power of standing up for what's right, even when the odds are against you. I'm curious, where are you listening from and what time is it right now? Drop a comment and let me know. Thank you for spending your time with me and for listening to this story. For more real-life inspired stories like this, check out the other videos on my channel. And don't forget to subscribe to Maid's Daughter Stories for more tales where small acts of honesty and love light up even the coldest corners of the world.